Right boys, welcome to the 12th video on my channel. Today we're going to be ranking League 2 clubs for the 25-6 season by club size. Now, when considering how big these teams really are, we'll be factoring fan base size and loyalty, trophies, stadium size, and history and legacy. But at the same time, because it's League 2, we've got to be realistic. We're just not going to be factoring things like global recognition and brand, commercial power and wealth, and we're certainly not going to be fooled by recent league positions. A single good season doesn't create size. Now, kicking off with the smallest club in League 2 this season, and I'm sorry, but it's got to be Bromley. The 24-25 season was the first ever season in the Football League. And for me, that instantly puts them at the bottom when compared to the clubs of decades or even centuries of EFL experience. Most League 2 clubs have at least some historical presence of previous EFL runs. Bromley have none. And the blunt truth is, they're quite literally guests at the table everyone else built decades ago. On number 23, we've got Harrogate Town. Bigger than Bromley, but still near the absolute bottom in terms of overall club size. Again, another team to only reach the Football League in the last 5 years. Bromley reached the Football League for the first time in 2020, but before that, spent their entire life in non-league obscurity and mostly unknown to anyone outside Yorkshire. Much like Bromley, they're newcomers with zero historical weight behind the badge. An average attendance is often under 3,000, which puts them in the bottom 3-4 in League 2 every season. And just off that, you can imagine how bad their away support is. And the blunt truth is, they're playing in the league with clubs pulling 8 to 15k weekly, and Harrogate barely dent 3k. On number 22, we've got Salford. As most people will be aware, Salford were non-league nobodies until the Class of 92 took over in 2014. Their rise was fast, but before the takeover, they were literally Northern Premier League stagnant. They don't have any fans for their egos to be hurt, no history, and an extremely small club in big boy clothes. On number 21, we've got Barrow. While Barrow have no doubt earned respect for solid performances in recent seasons, they're still one of the smallest clubs in the division by most major footballing standards. But the Football League history is pretty bad. Barrow were out of the EFL for 48 years between 1972 and 2020. Yes, they were part of the league way back, but after nearly half a century non-league, that legacy is barely relevant today. Hawker Street holds around 5,000 with average attendances of just 2,500 to 3,000, among the lowest in League 2. The local population is small and geographically isolated, limiting the supporter base. No trophies, no famous cup runs, no memorable players or moments that broke through into national relevance, and they've never really made an impact in the wider footballing consciousness. Even in non-league, they weren't really a powerhouse, and including the clubs I've just mentioned, they can't really compete financially most of the league and aren't backed by high-profile owners. On number 20, we've got Barnet, just a very small club. On number 19, we've got Fleetwood. Fleetwood only entered the EFL in 2012 after rapid promotion from non-league, based in a small town of around 25,000 people, and so the fan base hasn't grown too much. And the blunt truth is, they feel modern, not historic, and history still counts in football in size. On number 18, we've got Crawley. Now, a bit like Fleetwood, but 1 year earlier, Crawley were non-league until 2011 when they were first promoted to League 2. Crawley's stadium is small, attendances are low, they have a short history in professional football, they operate with modest finances, and they're based in a mid-sized town with a big club competition nearby. And that's why they're a very small club. On number 17, we've got MK Dons. And no, I'm not jumping on the bandwagon of people saying they should be 24. People often forget that MK Dons have played in the Championship, something that these previous teams I've just mentioned will never do. They have a massive stadium, attendances of around 6,000 to 8,000 fans at home, better than most of the league. But we cannot escape the facts. The club was formed in 2004, and as a result, MK Dons lack identity and history in the traditional sense. At number 16, we've got Cheltenham. Cheltenham have little to no history, only becoming a Football League team in 1999. Cheltenham's biggest achievement is winning promotion to League 1 in 2021. They've never been in the Championship or had major cup runs, and a very small fan base with average home attendances of 3,500 to 4,500. Cheltenham consistently operate on a tight budget, often one of the smallest in whatever league they're in, and to cut them some sort of slack regardless of the fact this has nothing to do with their club size. Cheltenham have been known for smart recruitment and good coaching despite not having the funds, and they heavily rely on being well run but not necessarily wealthy. On number 15, we've got Accrington Stanley, who are they? And that pretty much sums it up. At number 14, we've got Newport County. Now, I'd say Newport are an average to slightly below average club size in League 2. Not the absolute smallest, but still in the bottom half of the division when ranked by overall club stature. They are definitely an established Football League club, consistently been in the EFL since 2013. They haven't got any history in the top 2 divisions though, but they have had some decent cup runs. Most notably beating Leicester in 2019 in the FA Cup, but they're not really known for any league titles or deep playoff success. Newport have got a very modest budget. They're a fan-owned club, meaning they operate without private investment, and they have one of the lowest wage budgets in the league. And their attendances just scream small club to me. At number 13, we've got Shrewsbury Town. Shrewsbury are well-run, respected club with a solid League 1 history. So why are they this low? Shrewsbury have been solid EFL members for decades, even spending nearly 10 years straight in League 1. But for me, they're just a League 2 club. Mid-table attendances, modest financial backing, and no major honours. On number 12, we've got Cambridge United. Now, Cambridge being 12 means they're the most bang-average club-sized club in the league. Now, Cambridge are the first club team we mentioned in this list who have actually had a stint in the second division back in the 90s. They've also spent a bit of time in non-league, but they've predominantly been a League Two team. Cambridge's average home attendance over the years has been between 5,500 to 6,000, which again is bang on average in League Two. Cambridge play at the Abbey with a capacity of 8,100 and very much a League Two ground. And you don't get any more of a League Two club than Cambridge United. And number 11, we've got Walsall. Hey, Walsall fans are not going to be happy. Now, it goes without saying that Walsall have had over 100 years in the Football League, and on paper are probably a League One club. But there's a reason why they're the smallest Football League team in Birmingham. Walsall are a classic EFL club, strong infrastructure, loyal support, long history, but they've slipped into League Two and trying to rebuild. For me personally, 11th is fair. They're a sleeping mid-tier giant in a league full of rising projects and fallen names. Now, moving on to the 10 biggest clubs in League Two this season, in my opinion. At number 10, we've got Colchester United. Now, Colchester have had over 50 years in the Football League, played in the Championship as recently as 2006-2008. Well-known cup runs, beating Leeds United 3-0 in 1971 and Spurs on pens in 2019. No major silverware, but a respectable long-term EFL record. Colchester might not make the headlines, but they're a club with stadium, stability and Football League heritage to justify a top 10 size ranking in League Two. At number 9, we've got Crewe. Crewe might not feel like a big club at first glance. They're not backed by billionaire owners. They don't have tens of thousands of fans. But when you take a deeper look at what defines a big club in League Two, it becomes clear why Crewe are considered one of the bigger clubs in the division. With over 100 years in the Football League, Crewe have spent most of their time in League One, with a few seasons in the Championship. In League Two terms, this puts them well above average historically. And one thing I must note is that Crewe are known for having one of the best academies in the UK, producing homegrown players who went on to play in the Premier League and international levels. The likes of Danny Murphy, Dean Ashton, Rob Jones, Nick Powell, Luke Varney, Ashley Westwood. Even today, Crewe consistently field academy graduates and develop talent that moves up the pyramid. Their youth system gives them national respect that many League Two clubs simply don't have. At number 8, we've got Gillingham. Gillingham are often seen as a big club in League Two, and yes, it's fair to say they're a bigger club than Crewe when comparing the two across club size, metrics like stadium and fan base, budget and historical profile, etc. They're still not a giant of the likes of Notts County, but yeah, Gillingham are the only professional Football League club in Kent, and the name Gillingham is synonymous with the EFL football in the South East. Gillingham were also in League One for 8 seasons straight between 2013 and 2022, and the Championship for 6 seasons straight between 1999 and 2005, including a 13th place finish in 2002. For me, that comfortably puts them 8. At number 7, we've got Chesterfield. Now, there's no doubt that the massive reason for putting Chesterfield 7th was based on the fan base. They're an extremely well-supported club. In the National League, they average 7,800 fans at home, some games even getting over 9,000, and they're regularly outsold many League Two sides. They've had over 100 years in the Football League, former League One regulars. They're also known for a famous 1997 FA Cup run getting to the semi-finals versus Middlesbrough. Again, not a massive club, but definitely up there in League Two. At number 6, we've got the Kings of the Wirral, Tranmere Rovers. People will argue with this one, but listen, one of the biggest stadiums in League Two, dedicated support despite being near Liverpool and Everton, over 100 years in the Football League, multiple seasons in the old Division 1, came one game away from the Premier League in the 1990s under John Aldridge, and are seen as a proper football club by many in the EFL. At number 5, we've got Grimsby Town, a club from the edge of the North Sea, but make no mistake, they're one of the biggest clubs in League Two. Again, another club that's been in the Football League for well over 100 years, and they've played in the top flight, finishing as high as 5th in Division 1 in the 1930s. That's something that very few current League Two clubs can say. Grimsby have just got a big club presence, they bring thousands away, and they consistently rank in the top 5 for attendance in League Two. At number 4, I've got Bristol Rovers. Along with Bristol City, often cited as one of the biggest clubs not to have played in the Premier League, and don't forget they represent half of one of England's biggest cities. Bristol's a massive football city, and while Rovers are often in City's shadow, their identity is strong, unique and fiercely supported. They've spent over 30 seasons in the second tier during their history, finishing 6th on 2 occasions. This is a club that spent most of its life above League Two, not in it. Now, considering one of my last videos sparked a massive debate as to who's got better fan base, Bristol Rovers or Grimsby Town, I've got no doubt there'll be arguments over who's a bigger club. Now, while Grimsby might bring a few more fans to certain away games, and you could argue their fan base is a bit more loyal, if you're talking about overall fan base size, I think Bristol Rovers no doubt takes the lead. Bristol Rovers represent a major city, Grimsby don't. Rovers have also spent most of the last 20 years in League One with occasional dips to League Two, promoted back to League One as recently as 2022. On the other hand, Grimsby have dropped to non-league twice since 2010 and only recently re-established themselves in League Two. Rovers are backed by owner Hussein Al Saeed with significant ambition and financial clout, a decent training ground, improved facilities and long-term plans for stadium redevelopment. Grimsby are community run and well managed but don't have the same investment power. And to sum it up, Grimsby are a big club for League Two, but Bristol Rovers are bigger. Now moving on to the top 3 biggest clubs in League Two this season. At number 3 we've got Swindon. Now Swindon are the first club to be mentioned in this list who've had a spell in the Premier League. Swindon endured a season in the Premier League in the 93-4 season and spent decades in the Championship before that. Swindon have also won the League Cup, played in Europe and produced players like Glenn Hoddle and Sean Taylor. Nothing more needs to be said. Now the second biggest club for me has got to be Oldham Athletic. Now this will no doubt surprise a few people with Swindon winning League Cups, but in terms of historical pedigree in EFL, Oldham have spent more time in the top two divisions. They've also reached 2 FA Cup semi-finals and have that founding Premier League member status. Oldham represent a large part of Greater Manchester with deep roots, one of the proper northern football clubs with strong working class identity, and are still viewed as a Championship level club in exile. On the other hand, Swindon are well supported but less national pull. And finally, number 1, Notts County, the biggest club in League Two, and here's why. Founded in 1862, Notts County are the oldest professional football club in the world. That alone puts them in a league of their own. Yes, Oldham have the Premier League badge, yes, Swindon have the trophies, but Notts County have the history, the stadium, the fan base, and the weight of the legacy that makes them the biggest club in League Two right now. But anyway, boys, we're going to wrap up the video there. I do hope you enjoyed. Please comment down below where you'd rearrange the teams. But yeah, see you in the next one.